Well, hello again. Gary Stearman. Welcome to another edition of Prophecy in the News. You're going to be delighted to meet today's guest. His name's Avi Lipkin. He's from Israel, and we're going to talk about Israel and politics, so stay with us. Thanks for joining us today, and I want to introduce to you Avi Lipkin. Many of you already have met Avi right here on Prophecy in the News. He's the author of these 6 books, and we'll be talking about the content of these books from the perspective of Avi's experience in Israeli politics, in not only the politics of the Middle East, but the culture of the Middle East. He's a real expert. Avi, welcome back to Prophecy in the News.
It's always good to be back in Oklahoma City, my second home.
Your second home. And Avi asked me a minute ago to ask him about Oklahoma City weather, but I don't think we have time enough to talk about that, right?
We have about 20 hours of taping we have to do, but we're good.
All right. We're going to talk today about what I consider to be an extremely important subject. We are here at Prophecy in the News very much concerned with the development of modern Israel since 1948, even before that. Why? Because the Bible says so much about it. It says so much about Israel being regathered in the latter days. It is, I think, incumbent upon Christians to be intelligent and aware of what's going on in Israel. It's very closely aligned with politics in America. And Avi, by the way, as you will find out today, is a political expert. He himself is developing a program whereby he may very soon be involved with the Knesset, Israel's parliament. Avi, let's just go ahead and start by talking about today's leader in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. He's much in the news today.
Yes, Benjamin Netanyahu is a man whom I admire greatly. Christians always ask me, what do you think about Netanyahu? And I always say he's the right man in the right place at the right time. He is the leader of the Likud party. I, until just very recently, was a member of the Likud party. I was Likud all my life. At first it was the Cherut party, then it became the Gachal party, which is Cherut and liberals when they merged. Then it became Likud, and it's been Likud ever since. Other parties have joined up. In this last elections, we had Yisrael Beitenu, Israel Our Home, led by Victor Lieberman, and his party joined the Likud for the purposes of the elections. So the Likud basically, if you want to give it a crass name, would be kind of like the Israeli version of the Republican Party. Israel is not a country that has a system like the United States, but rather more like the European and Canadian systems, coalition parliaments. The trick is you have to have 100, out of 120 members of our parliament, out of our Knesset, you have to have at least 61 deputies, 61 out of 120. You have to have a majority. And then if you have the majority, you present this majority to the president of Israel, Shimon Peres, and then he basically accepts you as the leader of the ruling coalition. And that's how the government is put together in Israel.
Well, the party today, the Likud party, is not what it was some time ago, and there have been many changes in Israeli politics. Going back in the last few months, we all thought that Benjamin Netanyahu was solid as a rock. There were new elections recently. You can talk about that. And he seems to have lost some footing lately. What's going on there?
Well, for those who know the political system in Israel, usually, we have a joke in Israel, we have usually the ultra-Orthodox parties, which we know as Shas and Agudat Yisrael, which have a combined force of 17 members of Knesset. And don't forget, the Likud has 31 in these last elections. So theoretically, the ultra-Orthodox and the Likud party and this new party, well, it's not a new party, Naftali Bennett's party, which is known as the Jewish Home. The religious and the Likud could easily put together a government with more than 62, 63 seats, but then it would leave out the left-wing parties, and there's now a new center-left party of known as Israel's Future, Lapid's party, Yair Lapid. And Yair Lapid is I don't want to call it a yuppie party, but it is a party that really, really got a lot of votes from the young people in Israel, especially from Tel Aviv. And what we're seeing today in Israel is a demand by many people in the country that the ultra-Orthodox and the Arabs who are not really sharing the burden, this is the term, sharing the burden in the economy, sharing the burden in the military service. And so you have a number of groups that are now coalescing around this idea that the ultra-Orthodox shouldn't all be studying in yeshiva, they should be serving in the army. After the army, they can do whatever they want. But the ultra-Orthodox party are saying, no, those who serve in the army serve in the army. Those who go study in the yeshiva have like a Mount Olympus status. You don't touch them. And of course, the Arab Muslims do not want to serve in the army. We'll talk a little later, perhaps, about the Arab Christians who do want to serve in the army now, which is a new phenomenon. And these people are going to join my party, hopefully. But basically, the problem is getting the parties to get along with each other. And Netanyahu has a very difficult task in forming such a coalition.
And forming a coalition is everything in a parliamentary system. You have to have people who will elevate you to a particular position and hold you in some esteem and trust you to go ahead with the necessary leadership. And where Netanyahu had this for a number of years, he seems to have lost it. So Avi, before we went on today, basically was saying to me that there will certainly be new elections in Israel. This at a time, and I want to ask you about this, when Egypt seems to be fragmenting into a number of different factions. The Muslim Brotherhood seems to be losing control, and then to Israel's north, Syria. Well, everybody's read about Syria. It's coming apart. And in the midst of all this ferment and turmoil, you have Israel struggling to form a unity in its own government. What's going to happen?
Well, it's indeed a very interesting point. You know, that I used to say for years that Israel was like a flower in the middle of the desert, like an oasis. Now it's like a flower in the middle of a firestorm, a forest fire. Because as you said correctly, you have this so-called Arab Spring that started in February 2011, and these Arab countries are still suffering from endemic civil war and struggle, which it hurts me to say it. They're human beings. I don't want to see them killing each other, but this will never end. The Arab Spring will never end. And so Israel is trying to lead a normal life in the midst of a very abnormal human predicament situation. So, like I said before, this idea of sharing the burden, we're living in a country where people are looking at very high taxation rates. And, you go to Israel, and Israel is the kind of a country where everybody goes to the mall, everybody goes to the movies, everybody goes to restaurants, life goes on, people get married, you have bar mitzvahs, you have all kinds of family parties and things going on. And life in Israel is great. It's very expensive, but it's great. And all around us, all these countries are collapsing upon themselves and killing each other like a house of cards. And so what you see in the Israeli reality, the Israeli political reality, is a lot of mundane, kind of like disregard for everything that's happening around Israel. And so a lot of people are saying that the military is spending too much, when the fact is Israel has to be ready for any eventuality. And of course Iran, which I don't think we're going to really talk about in this program too much. But we have the problem with Iran, we have the problem next door with Syria, and yet people are saying taxes are too high, and the yeshiva students are not serving in the army, and the Arabs are not serving in the army. And, so the young people in Israel are saying, what are we, suckers? That we're serving the army and paying taxes, and then we've got people who are freeloaders who are not really, in their opinion, doing anything for the country. Now, of course, the ultra-Orthodox rabbis look at the yeshiva students as the salvation of Israel from all these wars and all these curses. They may have a point.
One quick question,
Sure.
Then I want to turn to the Israeli newspapers you brought with you today. The quick question would be, let's say there are going to be new elections. Any predictions about what's going to happen then? Will there be greater stability, for greater fragmentation?
I think the problem here is not the numbers that will come out of another election. I think the problems are genuine ideological problems, and it's indeed an interesting point that Yair Lapid, who is center-left, is actually very close now to Naftali Bennett of the National Religious Party. I mean, neither of the parties agree on religion, but they both agree that the ultra-Orthodox parties are a threat to the future of Israel.
You seem to be saying that Israel is moving leftward just a little bit.
What is happening is Israel is polarizing between the ultra-Orthodox in a certain direction, the Arabs in a certain direction, and the more, how shall I say, young people, as you said, more towards the left. It's not that they're towards the left. They are more towards an equal sharing of the burden of the military and taxes and the economy. And for example, in Europe, there's an organization called the OECD, which says that at least 81% of the population has to be working for the economy to be viable. Now, Israel has 66% of the population working, and yet Israel miraculously is still surviving, primarily because of the high-tech, the tourism, the diamonds.
Now, we're talking with Avi Lipkin, author, lecturer from Israel, and we're going to turn now to, I guess, some show and tell. You brought some publications from Israel, and there's something you want to talk about that's going on right now. And why don't you turn to that subject?
Yes, well, indeed. You know, I've been with you guys for over 16 years, actually, I think 18 years. Since 1995, we've been doing shows. And I've been in the churches in America, Canada, and Europe for 23 years. And the vast majority of my churches are Protestant churches. And I don't have to tell you that in the Protestant churches, there are many of those who don't like the Vatican or Catholicism, or many of those who don't like the Russian or Greek Orthodox churches. And living in Israel, we just don't have Protestants. The Christians who live in Israel today, who are 8% of our population, so 4% are Catholic, 4% are Greek and Russian Orthodox. We don't have Protestants. We have just a smattering, a very few. And so my Protestant friends here in America and in Canada and Europe say, oh, you're going to be stuck with the Catholics and the Greek Orthodox, and they'll never support you, and they'll never support your party, and they're anti-Zionist, and they're anti-Semitic. And so something very interesting happened. I was home in November. Actually, I should have been here in November. There was this hurricane, Sandy, and my wife said to me, guess what? You're not going back to America. I'd fly back to Kennedy Airport and be in New York. Then there was a nor'easter, and I was stuck in Israel. I wanted to come back to the States to work. And then while I was in Israel, this article appeared in the newspaper, and it's about a Greek Orthodox priest who basically is being threatened with death now because he says, and this is a historical first, he's saying that the Arabic-speaking Christians of Nazareth in the north must serve in the Israeli army. Their future is in Israel. Their future is with the Jewish people, not with the Muslims.
Wow.
And this is a first. And the Greek Orthodox Church rebuked him and said, no, Israel is the enemy. We are going to be with the Muslims. And a very important testimony that I wanted to share with you, and this is another piece of show and tell that I have. Where did I put it? This is in my very first book, is Fanatic Islam, a Global Threat. This came out from the Catholic Church in November, December of 1990. I got my hands on this in January 91. It's in Italian, and I translated the article into the army. I gave it to the Israeli army. They translated this into Hebrew, and then I translated it into English in my very first book. This article blames the Muslims, blames Islam, blames the Hamas for the basically the ethnic cleansing of Bethlehem. And within 30 years, Bethlehem has gone from 90% Christian to 90% Muslim. And this article is in English in my very first book, Is Fanatic Islam a Global Threat? And before we talk about the books, I just want to say one thing very important. You remember the Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Rabin, who unfortunately was assassinated in 1995. The mayor of Bethlehem in 1991, 1992, when this article came out, was a Christian man by the name of Elias Frage. And Elias Frage came to Yitzhak Rabin, the Israeli Prime Minister, and said to him, you know, we don't want Bethlehem to be part of the Palestinian Authority. We want Bethlehem to be always connected with Jerusalem, be under the Israeli flag. And Yitzhak Rabin said, sure, we'll do it. There's only one problem. You've got to get the churches to agree. When the Catholic Church and the Greek Orthodox Church say, we want to be part of Israel, we will annex Bethlehem to Jerusalem. So these Christian churches, the Catholic and Greek Church, said, no, we're with the Palestinians. And because they did that, Bethlehem was ethnically cleansed. of its Christians. In other words, the enemy, I hate to say it, the enemy of the Christians of the Holy Land are the churches. Because for political reasons and for economic reasons, they will always align themselves with the Muslims and not with the Jews.
This little publication you're holding means the Holy Land in Italian, La Terra Santa. So what's the real significance of that article that you're holding there?
This is the first time in history that the Catholic Church comes out and says that the reason for the ethnic cleansing in Bethlehem is not the Jews. The reason for the ethnic cleansing of the Christians in the Holy Land is the Muslims. And this magazine was actually sequestered. It was removed from the shelves, from the bookstores, by the Catholic Church in a plea bargain with the Hamas not to kill Father George Abu Khazin, who wrote the article. And so I had to do some private investigation, sleuth work to get my hands on a copy of this. This is the original copy. And so, of course, like I said before, translated from Italian into Hebrew and then into English in my very first book is Fanatic Islam, a Global Threat. So this deals with Bethlehem. What we're going to talk about, hopefully, is we're going to talk about Nazareth and the Galilee.
And let's begin right now by stringing together all these little beads so that they're understandable. What about Nazareth?
If Bethlehem today is 90% Muslim and 10% Christian, Nazareth, which is not Palestinian Authority, Nazareth is Israel proper. And Nazareth today is 65% Muslim and 35% Christian. You know, Christians go to church on Christmas, and they're so happy, Nazareth, Bethlehem. These are now Muslim towns. And what has happened is, like I said before, there are a number of Arabic-speaking Christians who serve in the Israeli army. And when my son and I went up to visit the priest, who I mentioned before, and this is an article that I wrote for the Israel Today magazine. So my son and I are flanking the priest. His name is Father Gabriel. And Father Gabriel received us in his home for 4 hours, and there were 6 officers in the Israeli army who are Arabic-speaking Christians. And now what's happened is these people have been career officers for the last 20 years, so guess what? They now have children who are entering the army. They're army age. And so in the public schools in Nazareth, they don't fly the Israeli flag. They fly the Palestinian flag. And anybody who associates with the Jews or with Israel is threatened and beaten up and maybe killed. And so what is happening now, and one of the reasons why these Nazareth Christians and Galilee Christians will sign up for my party and will march with me to the Knesset, is because there are no Christians yet in the Knesset. And the Israeli government, because there is no political representation, there's nobody to defend these people. And their children are being threatened in schools if they go into the Israeli army.
If I may just interrupt the flow here for just a second, I think it's really important for you to pay attention at this point, because what Avi is saying is that Arabic Muslims do not support Israel. Arabic Christians do support Israel. There's a world of difference between the two faiths, and we're now seeing this difference beginning to manifest itself. Avi has written a book called Israel's Bible Block, and he's just about on the verge right now of explaining what he intends to do. The Bible Block would form the kernel of a new representative body in the Knesset, by which or through which Christians would actually become a voice in the Knesset. And Avi, this is something that's on your heart. You really want to do. Explain what you're doing.
Yes. Well, you know, I was born in America, praise God. I was raised on the lap or on the knees of the Boston Tea Party. You know, no taxation without representation.
Right.
Now, what has happened in Israel, there are 3 stages to the Christian population growth in Israel. We are now in the 2nd stage. We are approaching the 3rd stage. And we have dealt with this many times on your shows. 2% of the population are the Arabic-speaking Christians. They have been there for 2,000 years, since the time of Christ. So these are Arabic-speaking Christians, Greek Orthodox or Catholic. Some Protestants, very few. In 1989, 1990, with the collapse of communism, 1 million people moved to Israel, of which 30% are Christian, people who are married to the Jews. So 30% of 1 million is 300,000. So we went from 150,000 Christians, Arabic speakers, to 450,000. The population tripled. So 450,000 basically is 10 members of Knesset. You need 40,000 votes per member of Knesset. Now, again, the immigration from Russia and the Ukraine are primarily Russian Orthodox, which is a sister church of the Greek Orthodox, and Catholic. We don't have the Protestants. We don't have the American Protestants yet. What we have is 4% of the population is Catholic, 4% of the population is Russian and Greek Orthodox. That's 8%. And 6% of the population is Jewish, Russian, Ukrainian, married to the 6%, which are Russian Orthodox or Catholic. So the constituency potentially that could vote today for my party would be 14% of the Israeli population.
Quick question. How far away are you? What do you actually have to do before you can qualify to be a representative body in the Knesset?
Okay, there are 3 conditions. First condition we have already fulfilled, which is you have to provide 3 clauses, 3 principles. We've submitted 8, and they're in the book. Secondly, we need 100 signatures. We now have 70. And you don't just set up a table on Jaffa Street or Ben Yehuda Street. You have to find people with whom you can work, people whom you trust. We have 70 signatures. We're lacking 30. And these Arabic-speaking Christians have pledged, when I get back to Israel in March, that by April we'll have the other 30 signatures. And then we need $40,000. We've already paid our lawyer $8,000, so we need $32,000 to pay the Knesset registration bond and pay our lawyer, and the party's registered. Now, of course, once we start campaigning, we're going to need a budget for campaigning, and my lawyer says that in any country, any campaign is minimum $500,000 to $1 million, which we do not yet have. But we're going to have the party registered. It is not anymore a dream. It's like a baby. You know, when a woman is pregnant, it's not a dream anymore. It's in the baby stage. It's in the.
And this is exciting to me, but in just a very few words, what is the goal of the Bible Block Party? Just very clearly state the goal.
The purpose of the party is to defend Judeo-Christian values, Judeo-Christian Western civilization, and democracy. And it's there to defend all those who are Judeo-Christian, those who believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, those who believe in the Old Testament, which is Jews and Christians agree in the Old Testament. And thirdly, Jews and Christians agree that the Messiah is a Jew from Israel who speaks Hebrew. So if we agree on these things, and we agree on the borders that God has promised Israel, and that we should never hand over land to the Islamic enemy, which will never be a friend. Islam cannot befriend the Jews and Christians, because Islam calls on the death of the Jews and the Christians who do not convert to Islam. Islam may temporarily make peace with Israel, but the bottom line is that any agreement will be revoked when the Muslims are strong enough to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. So this is a platform for all those Jews and Christians to march together as a unity party, as an alliance party, and as a fraternal party.
As we're getting near the end of the program today, there's something fascinating in Israel today to me, and that is the fact that the Muslim factions in Israel are hardening up their positions as time goes by. For example, they now claim that the temple, what we call the Temple Mount, was never Jewish property. They deny that there was ever even a Jewish presence up there. And you have an interesting publication, a couple of interesting publications there. They've changed their story in the last few years.
Okay. Well, firstly, what happens is you have something called the revision of history. In other words, the history was recognized, and then in 1964, Yasser Arafat founded the Palestine Liberation Organization, and all of a sudden, he revoked the recognition of history. So, for example, this is something I found in 1968 in Jerusalem. I bought it. It is a tour guide to the Temple Mount, and it explains that the Temple Mount is based, the two mosques, the Omar Mosque and the Aqsa Mosque, are actually located on the site where Solomon's temple was, where Herod's temple was, and where Hadrian actually built a pagan temple to Jupiter in 135 AD. And this was printed in 1962. Arafat founded his organization in 1964. He says, guess what? This is not history. And so that's 1962. And this is another page from 1925 from the Islamic, official Islamic presentation that says that the Temple Mount is where the temple of Solomon and Herod was.
But today they stoutly deny it.
Yes. And you know what? I don't know. I think I've told this joke in the past here on your show. What is the difference between neurotic people and psychotic people?
Well, I'm sure you'll tell us.
Yeah, well, it's one of my best jokes. I got a 3-year jail sentence in Switzerland for telling this joke. Neurotic people dream about castles in the air. Psychotic people live in castles in the air. And psychiatrists collect the rent. Now, Hitler was psychotic for many reasons. I'll give you 2. He thought he could conquer the earth and kill the Jews. Okay, can anyone conquer the earth? Nobody can conquer the earth. The Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Mongols, Napoleon, Hitler, Stalin, they were all stark, raving, mad lunatics. Nobody can conquer the earth. Only the Lord has dominion over the earth. Secondly, they thought that they could kill all the Jews. Can you kill all the Jews? It says in Jeremiah, there will be no more Jews when the moon, the sun, and the stars stop shining. So anyone who believes in God, which is the Jews and the Christians, knows nobody can kill the Jews. And those who don't believe in God know that the Jews have been scattered to the 4 corners of the earth. So it's impossible to kill all the Jews if you can't conquer the earth, which is psychosis number 1. Islam wants to conquer the world, kill the Jews, kill the Christians, kill the Hindus, kill the Buddhists, kill the blacks. Then the Muslims kill each other. Then they get 72 virgins. So Islam is a super psychosis. So when they deny the existence of the temple on the Temple Mount, it's just another form of psychosis.
Avi has written 6 books, and we're going to offer all 6 of them to you today, and you'll see them on your screen all laid out so that you can see the covers. They are Israel's Bible Block, which we talked about. His first book is Fanatic Islam, A Global Threat. Second book, Christian Revival for Israel's Survival. He's written Islamic Threat Update. He has written Return to Mecca, and this one, Islam Prophesied in Genesis. The collected wisdom of Avi Lipkin in 6 books. We're offering these to you for $75 plus shipping and handling. When you call, ask for the Avi Lipkin Middle East package, and everybody will know what you're asking for. The Avi Lipkin Middle East package. If you haven't availed yourself of these writings, you will learn ever so much. All of his books are written in a very readable way. They're entertaining, but they're packed with information. As a bonus, by the way, when you ask for the Avi Lipkin Middle East package, we have 3 DVDs, which will include absolutely free in this package. One is an interview that Avi had with Derek Gilbert. One is America's Islamic Future under President Barack Obama. Ooh, that should be interesting. And this one is called The Future of Israeli Politics. And you can review a lot of Avi's opinions, the wit, the wisdom, from a man who has been on the inside and really understands what's going on. Avi, we're down to a few seconds here, and we're going to do another program with you and another, and we're going to be talking with you for a while because you have so much to say. Thanks for being with us today.
God bless you.
And same to you. Gary Stearman, wishing you a great day in the Lord, and keep looking up, everybody. Prophecy in the News is a viewer-supported program made possible by our many friends around the world. Be sure you tune in every day for breaking news and our daily prophetic news updates at prophecyinthenews.com, or follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/prophecyinthenews.